Yeah, and we are now recording the webinar. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. An interesting topic. We will be talking about fast AI today, so hope you enjoy. I'm going to do a brief introduction about Data Umbrella, and then I'll hand over the microphone to Hamel for the talk, and then we will open up for question and answer. But during the talk, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. Reshama and I will look at them. You can also add them to the question and answer section, which is also part of the chat, and then we will look at them, and then Hamel will be able to answer them. This video will there'll also be a video. The webinar will be recorded, and we will post it on our YouTube channel as soon as we can. Data Umbrella is a community of underrepresented persons in data science, and we are a nonprofit organization. So we have a team behind everything that happens, from organizing to advertising the events. So here we have Reshama. Reshama is a statistician and data scientist, and you can find her on Twitter, LinkedIn, and GitHub as Reshama S. I am also a statistician and data scientist, and you can find me on Twitter as Beryl. We have a code of conduct, and we're dedicated to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone. And we thank you for helping make Data Umbrella a friendly community for all. You can support us in various ways. The first way is following our code of conduct so that we make the environment welcoming, and so that we can have folks coming back to interact with us and going through our material. We also have a Discord community chat where you can ask and answer general questions, and also share events, jobs, and other relevant material. You can also donate to our nonprofit. We are on Open Collective as Data Umbrella. We're also on Benevity, which is a company matched enabled platform where, for example, if you choose to donate $100, your company matches the same donation. We also have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We always post the videos to all the webinars we have hosted in 24 to 48 hours. So you can subscribe to get notifications whenever we post a new video. And also you can go through the relevant material that is already there. We also have different libraries on our YouTube channel. So you'll find libraries like career advice, data visualization, data science, scikit-learn sprint PyMC series, and NumPy series, because we also do a lot of open source. You can also sign up to our monthly newsletter, which is on Substack. So we are on Substack as Data Umbrella, and we release a newsletter every month. We also have our website, dataumbrella.org, where you can find resources on open source, guides on inclusivity, accessibility, and responsibility, and more. We are on all social media platforms, so you can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We also have a Discord channel. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. We also have a Meetup group, so you can join our Meetup. That is where we post all our events regularly. We also have a GitHub account where we have issues you can contribute to. This webinar has live captioning, so if you feel like you need to use live captioning, you can click on the closed captioning button, and you can get live captioning as the webinar goes on. On our YouTube channel, on our GitHub channel, we have issues on transcripts. So our event, because we host many events, it's always good to have transcripts so that it can be easy for viewers to get our video and get straight to the part they're interested in. So you can go to our GitHub account and pick an issue or a video and do the timestamps for the video. You don't have to do the whole timestamps. If the video is long, you can choose a section and work on it and submit a pull request. We have several upcoming events. On October 11th, we have an event On October 18th, we have an event on overview of 3D processing image. So for October 11th, this is the event you're having now. On October 25th, we also have another event on scikit image. And then in November, we have an event on introduction to Rust. All these events can be found on our Meetup. Seems there's an issue with the slides. Just give me a minute to sort that out. In the meantime, Reshama, can you do the introduction for Hamel?
Sure, yes. The slides aren't there, but I know Hamel Husain's name through Fastai. You're a core contributor, and I know that you're in Australia right now at the unconference. And I know that you used to work at Outerbounds, and I know that you did a great podcast with Hugo Bound Anderson and all. And I remember you worked at GitHub before as well. So that is what I can remember off the top of your head. But when you begin, feel free to add any details that we have missed. And thank you for your patience.
Yeah, great.
Yes. So
okay, should I begin now or? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so thank you for the introduction. I'm Hamel. I've been doing machine learning for almost 20 years. I have been working on tooling and software for quite a bit of that time, especially machine learning infrastructure. So I've worked at DataRobot, Airbnb, GitHub, Outerbounds, and then before that I spent a lot of time doing consulting with a lot of different industries, working on machine learning and kind of general data science things. Somewhere along the way, I got involved with Fastai. I got involved with Fastai about 3 years ago, and have been a core contributor to several of their projects. And then one project that's been really interesting to me is nbdev, which is we'll be using today in my demo, which is a really interesting software development framework for Python that kind of lets you write and distribute and test and document software in a really nice and easy way. So let me kind of jump into it. I'm going to share my screen, and I will. Can you see my screen? By the way.
Yep, we can see your screen.
Great.
Pull request.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm going to start with this document. So people can come from many different starting points and backgrounds. I don't, maybe this is like you're just learning sort of how to code, or maybe like you've been writing code for a while and maybe you haven't contributed to open source. I think FastAI is a really good place to kind of get your feet wet in kind of open source contributions, especially if you're a Python programmer, and especially if like you are interested in machine learning and things like that, which is what FastAI kind of focuses on. But even if you're not interested in that, if you're just interested in really interesting Python sort of libraries that are a bit different and that kind of will show you something interesting, it's a good place for that too. And I'll talk more about why I think it's a really good entry point for a lot of people, or these fast AI projects are a really good entry point for a lot of people in a moment. First, I just want to point you at this document, pull request made easy. And this kind of goes through sort of the setup process of kind of getting you set up with all the required tools to make a pull request on a FastAI project. And so there's some prerequisites. One is, okay, FastAI is using GitHub. So we recommend, installing a CLI tool called GH. You don't have to use the CLI tool, but, we recommend it. It might make it easier to follow the documentation if you do that. There's also some dependencies. So if you're using Conda, and we show you we have links to all this stuff. We don't know what it means, but we have some dependencies to install. And then we kind of go through this like detailed walkthrough of kind of how to set yourself up. I'm not going to go through this document. I just want to point you at it and something that is worth to go through in detail, just to set yourself up for the first time. And so like this also assumes that you are somewhat familiar with using Git and things like that. If you're not familiar using Git, we actually have this other page called Git Notes, which kind of goes in more detail about using GitHub and Git, which might be useful for people, if they're not as familiar with those things. Okay, so that's kind of like an overview of the setup. The next thing I want to talk about, so I think the best way to show you how to contribute to FastAI is kind of watch me contribute to FastAI. Because yeah, I think it's easier to learn by doing. So kind of like, let's assume that I've gone through all these setup steps, especially the ones in this pull request made easy. And now one really project that I really like, is called Fastcore. So let me just open the documentation for that here. So Fastcore is a library that extends Python. It's kind of like a set of utilities for Python to give Python more capabilities, such as like more functional programming things like type dispatch, a bunch of other utilities, kind of inspired by other programming languages, but also like things that we felt that we needed while developing FastAI. And so it's a really interesting Python library. And every FastAI project has like a documentation site that looks like this. It's automatically generated by notebooks. And that's its own talk by itself. I'm not going to go too deep into that. I'm just going to show you some things. And so like one really interesting way to get started in open source that's I think is pretty underrated is contributing to documentation. And the reason why I think documentation is really valuable is to contribute to documentation, you actually have to understand deeply what's going on. And so like, I'm just going to show you an example. So this is Fastcore. Fastcore's library is Python goodies to make your coding faster, easier, more maintainable. It kind of goes through this. So let's say like I'm browsing this documentation, like I'm using Fastcore. And I'm on a page, and this might happen to you. You may, when you're learning about FastAI, reading documentation, you might be reading, something on the document, and like so, what you have here is like usually have the function or the method, and then you have some documentation about what it does. So okay, this if none thing it kind of describes what it does. So it gives you B. If A is none, else it gives you A. And then there's this demonstration here of what that is. This test EQ thing, that's actually FastAI. This is like an assert statement that these two arguments are equal. So this is very FastAI or Fastcore specific. This is just a wrapper around an assert statement that kind of prints out the error in a nicer way. If the assert is not true. But anyways, like this is kind of like the documentation looks like. And I happened to notice when looking this morning, I was kind of just looking around, actually for this talk. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Then I was looking at this page specifically, and I said, okay, that's interesting. There's this null type thing, and this null type thing has, it says null type, and it says an object that is false and can be called, chained, and indexed. Okay, I guess this kind of makes sense, but it's kind of mysterious. Like, what is going on here? Like, what is this lowercase null? And then, like, how is this working? Like, what is going on? It's a little bit like opaque. Don't really understand what's going on here. Potentially, like, where does lowercase null come from? Like, doesn't make any sense. And then there's this kind of, and then similarly, there's this 2 null thing, I guess, kind of maybe makes sense. It seems like it's related to this, but again, it's not that clear, I don't think. And like you might feel this way when you look at any open source project, but I think Fastai projects are really special in that you get to use something called nbdev to contribute to documentation. So the cool thing about this is, okay, so we identified somewhere in the documentation where it's confusing. We're not really sure what is going on. And so what do we do about that? So what we can do about that is we can clone the library locally. So I've already cloned it, but what you would do to clone this library, and this is already in, some of this is in the setup, some parts of it in the setup step, but you can go here to the GitHub. You could use various methods to clone, like, clone this, and you could copy and paste it. So, you could do something like this and it would clone this. I've already cloned it. So we don't have to worry about that. And the next step is open a Jupyter notebook in the repository's root. And I'll kind of walk you through sort of a crash course and sort of how you can like navigate the documentation. So usually Fastai projects will have, you'll see kind of these folders. You'll usually have like a notebooks folder, which you can go into. And these these notebooks correspond to the documentation. So I don't want to get too deep into nbdev because that's in like a 2-hour long talk. And you can, that's a whole subject on its own. And we have lots of tutorials on what nbdev is and how it works. But essentially, like the really great thing about this documentation is the source code and the documentation is generated from a notebook. So let's find this null type thing. Like, where is that located? So we have this basic, it's called basic functionality, null type. Look at these notebooks. I'm looking for something that has like basic in it. This seems like it fits the bill potentially. Let me actually refresh this notebook or refresh my browser because I think I might have an old version here. And then let me close this Explorer page. Actually, let me show you side by side a bit so you can kind of get an idea of like the correspondence between the notebook and the documentation. So you see up here, like this is the notebook here, and you can see kind of how it corresponds. Like you have if none here, you have if none here. This prose is showing up on this page. You don't really have to worry about necessarily at this point, like how it's working. I can point you to those resources later, but let's go ahead and let's like jump directly to the thing that's confusing us. And the thing that's confusing us is this null thing, this null type. So let me like search for that null type. Okay. And let me make this bigger again so we can kind of focus. What's wrong with my browser? Oh, there you go. Okay, it just takes time. So where did that go? Null type. Okay, so the thing that's really cool about contributing to Fastai projects is like this nbdev thing that I'm showing you. And why is it cool? Is like it's very easy to understand what the entry point to anything is. So you're like, well, how are you supposed to use this null type? Like, how do you even like, what's the right code path in which to like instantiate this null type? Like, what's the context? And in normal projects, you would have to kind of like maybe put a debug thing somewhere, maybe in this null type, or find out where it's called, or really like it wouldn't be maybe not clear like what is happening. But here is just a notebook. So I'm gonna actually run this notebook up until this cell. So I have like a keyboard shortcut that will help me do this. I guess I'm just gonna show you kind of like I don't want to use keyboard shortcuts. You might not be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna restart the kernel and run up to the selected cell. Okay, and then like what happens is I can just focus on this and I can just run this itself and say, oh, okay, interesting. There's this null type thing. So that's interesting. It is some kind of object that has all of these dunder methods so that apparently when I use this and when I call this object, it does some interesting things. So like it looks like, okay, for example, so this null thing, so now we know where this null thing is coming from, is defined here, this lowercase null. And it looks like, okay, for example, this git attra thing seems like it's allowing me to sort of somehow it's false. And it's interesting. We can look at the code and like figure out why this is working this way. Like because it has this Boolean value, it has this bool dunder method, which kind of makes anything that if you tried to evaluate this, it'll be falsy. And so like these dunder methods look like they enable this behavior where you can just sort of, do anything and you can like call this even as a function, it'll still be false. You can get an attribute, which I already showed. You can get an item like that. And so this kind of makes sense. I understand what's happening. I think what's really confusing in the documentation is this lowercase null. I don't really know where it's coming from. So actually, like what I would propose is, okay, that's fine. You have this here, but why don't we look? And it looks like this null thing is used here inside this. So what I would say is like for the documentation, maybe we want to just put it in the documentation so it's more explicit. So like, maybe I just should make it more legible, like, or more readable by like being like showing where this comes from, like that. And I think that might be more like easier to understand. So like, okay, so I hope this makes sense. Another thing that we can notice here is like there's no test. So if you look, one way to like understand how to contribute to FastAI, like an easy hack, is to kind of look around at other cells in the notebook and see what's going on. So you see like these other things have tests. And you might think, oh, that's pretty interesting. Well, if these other things have tests, maybe this should have a test. Like, why doesn't this have a test? You might wonder. And the answer is like everything should have a test. Let me like add a test. So like, yeah, like this thing here, um, you might want to say it should be false. Okay. And that might be a test in itself. Now there's this hide thing, and this hide directive just means don't show this particular cell in the documentation. I don't want to repeat it. I mean, it's already up here. This is just, again, this is just like a test. And I don't want to, duplicate that in the documentation. So the way to kind of preview documentation is you can, once you set up all the prerequisites, you could issue this command nbdev preview. Oops, there's like a little bit of an error here, but it's actually telling me how to fix it. Actually, I need to just fix it like this. And I'm gonna hit this preview thing. Can you still hear me? Am I still streaming properly? Okay. Okay, great. So this nbdev preview is going to generate the documentation locally, and we can look at that. Okay. And then I'm going to see like how it looks. So let's go down to this like null type thing. Okay, so now you can see like this is actually like how it changed. You say, oh wow, okay, like now I think personally, I mean, that this is more understandable. There's not this like where did this come from? Like this is more explicit, it's more understandable. So kind of like this is what you would do. And if you wanted to make a pull request, let me just open a new terminal window. think, let me just resize this for a second so you can see what I'm doing. Is it big enough? Hopefully it's big enough. And there's an nbdev prepare command here. Oh, I need to do that export thing again, sorry. So what this does is it tests everything. So it tests it. So this nbdev prepare command tests all the notebooks and makes sure that there's no error. If you want to know more about nbdev, I really highly suggest going to the nbdev project actually. So there's a getting started guide, and we show you like how this works. We have a walkthrough video, these commands, we have FAQ, kind of get your feet wet. But actually, like I personally like to play around with something a little bit to get a feel for it, even before diving too deep. And so that's why I'm showing you kind of like this thing, because it can be motivating to show you like how it works. So we have this assert statement. We have this local documentation that I changed. And then if I show you the Git status, you'll see like these things have been modified. So let's see like what changed so you can see the notebook in the actual code, nothing is really going to change because we haven't really changed the source code. We just changed the documentation. So the only thing in this code that will change is these like markers, these cell markers, which can help you sync your source code back to notebooks. But we don't have to get deeply into that. I just want to kind of like show you what's going on. Now, if you wanted to make a pull request, you want to create a branch. So this is a way to create a branch. Git checkout B. I'm going to call it modify docs. I'm not that creative with branch names. I'm going to say make documentation clearer. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to push it to here. It's a new branch, so I'm going to use that. And I have a utility called open. You might be curious. Every time I use that, someone asks me what that is, and that's basically like a thing you can install. Let me see if I can find it. That's what I did. So if you want to know what that get open thing is, this thing, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. And basically, you'll see something like this on GitHub. You can compare pull requests, make documentation clear. Now, I actually don't want to merge this at all. So there's a reason why. So I'm going to show you something interesting. This is actually not a good pull request. It would be normally, but I'm going to show you something that you should do before you kind of finalize the pull request. There's like one really important step that I missed, and is when you it's always a good idea when you look at something like this to really check like how is this used? Like, okay, you have this null type thing. That's great. I understand it kind of in isolation. I understand in the notebook. I sort of understand like, okay, what it's doing. But then like it's always a good idea to think about how code is used elsewhere. Like this code that's here is like a utility that's meant to be used somewhere else. So like, where are you using this null type? Like, I want to know. Or like, where are we using this like to null? I want to know. And so that's really interesting. Like, how can I find that? So there's many ways to do that. What I personally do, because like Fastcore is like something that's used across all of Fastai projects, I try to do a code search. Now, you can use whatever code search method you want. You can use VS Code and search different projects. There's also this like cs.github.com, which is like a way to search organizations. It's like a better code search that GitHub has made. That's like an open beta. So if you sign up, they'll let you in like in a day. So you can use that. I'll show you like two different ways. Like I'll show you how to search code this way, and I'll show you how to search code like in VS Code. So I'm gonna like search an org. I'm gonna search the FastAI org. And I actually just want to I just want to search the whole org for this null type, but I only want like Python files. And I want to see like, okay, I'm searching the entire FastAI org for null type, this null type thing. And actually, I'm not seeing that as used anywhere. It's like just the only place I see it anywhere is in this Fastcore thing. And what does that tell me? It's like this is not being used. So that's interesting. And then also I'm gonna search for null. But I'm gonna do a little bit. I'm gonna make sure kind of be a little bit clever and say like, okay, I want to have like a null, and then also this is Python. I'm looking carefully to see, okay, that null type isn't used, but is that a lowercase null used anywhere? And I can't really see that it is. I mean, I see it in comments like the word null, but I don't see that being used. Like this null auth thing is not related here. No, I don't see it used anywhere, to be honest. This is not related. This is something else. Null auth is something else from some other kind of thing. And then this again is the null type that we have in Fastcore already. So wow, I don't see this anywhere. And then also to null. So to null, can we like check that out? Wow, I don't see that used anywhere. So what is my conclusion? So okay, when you see something like this, you should definitely go on Discord or you can and ask, say, hey, like I noticed you have these. So Discord, so there's a FastAI Discord. We just open it and let's see if we can. So I'll just kind of like show you what you would do. So let me go to the FastAI Discord. This is the FastAI Discord. And I might say, for these kind of questions, you might want to go into the FastAI dev channel and say, hey, I noticed that, what is it called again? It's called null type. So like Fastcore basics, null type is not used anywhere. Should I open a PR to get rid of this? And then have some background, like you should always say like give as much background as possible. So, I was trying to improve the documentation for this as I was a bit confused and did a search for null type across the FastAI org and didn't see it used anywhere. And like, if you can sort of share something, that's always useful. So like, let me actually see. Now they might not be able to see this, which is fine. But I'm gonna share a link. I know that I at least know like Jeremy has access to the cs.github.com, so I can share that. And so in this kind of thing where you were like not, if you're like new to FastAI and you're not really sure, that you should definitely ask a question about this. But like if you're gonna ask a question again, it's really good to sort of kind of state all the things that you understand and kind of share like the research that you did to get to that point. That's very helpful because it gives people the context of like, hey, like this is what I found, this is the research I did, kind of, and let people know that you were like very thorough in sort of doing that. In this case, like Since I'm a core contributor to Fastai, I'm pretty sure that's not being used because I've checked. And so actually, like, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this stuff. So I'm going to actually delete these cells completely because I think they're not being used at all. And so this is kind of like a odd presentation in the sense that I showed you how to make a PR, but in the process of doing like preparing for this demo, I actually discovered myself as not being used. So and I just thought, okay, instead of like making up something, I'm just going to show you like what actually happened. So this is kind of like what actually like happened to me, you know, in real life. And like, okay, you probably want to make a better commit message. I just was lazy and made the same commit message as last time, but that's fine. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. We can make the PR. You probably want to be more careful with that. I'm going to edit the PR and says like delete unused functions. Null type and to null, whatever here. In this case, I actually said something on Discord about it. So I'm just gonna actually like put similar things here. And what you can do is like you can tag, myself or Jeremy on these kind of things. Looks like I have spelling problems, which is fine. Okay, and then at some point, so what's going to be useful actually here is like a bunch of tests are going to run. What's actually useful here is like you'll have integration tests. So we'll know like if deleting this is gonna like break anything critical. Because it's going to run tests in nbdev. It's also going to run tests in Fastai. So if we missed it for some reason, like this to null thing and null type is used anywhere, we'll know about it because it will break one of these tests. So anyways, that's kind of like hopefully whet your appetite on how to contribute to Fastai projects. What I showed you is definitely like, there's probably still open questions like, what is this notebook thing? How did you do it? Like, what is nbdev? And the thing I want to impress upon you is like, it's very approachable. And the reason it's approachable is because it's a notebook. You can very easily, like, you don't have to guess about what something is doing. You can play with it. If you want to know what Git class is doing, for example, you can, execute that and you can like play with it. You can say, okay, like, what is this? Like you have these tests down here. You're like, well, what is this doing? Like, I don't even, what does this mean? And you can sort of play with this code and fiddle with it and sort of get an idea and even improve the documentation. You don't have to like go to 5 separate files. You can sort of look at the source code, look at the documentation, look at the tests, play with it, make the documentation better. And the best thing is like when you make the documentation better, you actually you'll get a really good code review from us. And we'll like check. It's a good way to check your understanding of what the code is doing, which is actually a really amazing way to learn about writing code, first of all, but also amazing way to learn like what Fastai is doing, because essentially like you're studying it and you're writing like better notes. You're contributing to the library and you're gonna get, because of the effort, you're gonna get a really good code review. And so this is kind of like what I did to get involved with Fastai. I kind of went through all of the notebooks in Fastcore and made them better. And certainly you can do that with any Fastai project. So that's kind of my spiel on Fastai, contributing to Fastai. I hope that helps. Eventually Jeremy might look at this and decide, okay, whether or not this is good or not. You know, you might look at this and say, okay, like this makes sense, and merge it. There might be a good chance of that. I actually haven't discussed this with him yet. But yeah, that's kind of that's how it goes. So yeah, you can. This is an example of how to contribute to Fastai. So hopefully that was useful. If there's any questions, I can take that now.
Hey, Hamel, thank you so much for the presentation. So one question that I had is, how long does it take for the PRs typically to get a review? And do you do the, you know, 2 people review a PR before merging, or what's your process?
Usually doesn't take too long at all. If your PR is really good, like it is clear in what it's trying to do, it's not uncommon to have it merged within 24 hours. You know, so, you know, if so what do I mean by is PR good? That's a very vague statement. What I mean is try to keep your PRs contained as possible to like one specific thing. If it's touching a lot of files and doing a lot of things, then it's going to be it's going to take a really long time to review it. And actually it's like, yeah, that makes it like harder to actually review it. So these kind of like very targeted changes, you know, are very useful. Um, so yeah, I would say that is a tip for getting it merged fast. And then also kind of some preliminary discussion, like if you're unsure, like on Discord and things like that, that can be really useful. And let people know. And then also make sure you tag us. And again, if you're really unsure, you can open an issue or on Discord. And so like if we have a heads up of what you're doing, then it's merged pretty fast. Or it's actually reviewed pretty fast.
So another question that I had was, should contributors check in with a particular, let's say it's something that's a little bit more complex, should they probably check in and start a discussion? Sorry for the noise, it's New York. Before doing a, you know, a complex PR with changes to a lot of files or a whole lot of code?
Yeah, I think the audio got cut out a bit when you're asking that, but I think I understand the question. It's should you check in with contributors before doing a complex PR? And the answer is absolutely yes. Like if it's very complex, you should not just open it. You should definitely discuss it a whole bunch. You know, you should discuss the idea, discuss the approach, so on and so forth with us before going there, because there might be like a really good reason we haven't done that yet, or you might be missing some context.
And do you have issues that are labeled, for instance, good first issue or easy issue or documentation? Can you go through some of the labels that you have for the open issues?
Yeah. Let's see. Can you still see my screen, by the way?
Yes, right now it says fastai/Fastcore.
Okay. So some projects we don't do the best job of labeling. Some of them where we're like more active at the moment, we do a good job labeling. It's like we have labels for nbdev itself. So if you want to get into nbdev, which is lots of fun, you know, we have categorized some labels like documentation. We have like bug fixes, enhancements. We don't have good first issues labels explicitly. Sometimes we do that. But you know, if there's any doubt about if you would like to be pointed at an issue, just ask us on Discord and we can suggest one. You know, because sometimes we're not necessarily labeling things as good first issue. We could try to do that more actually. But for right now, I would say pick a project you're interested in and then ask us about it. And then we can maybe suggest an issue to tackle. I think like generally speaking, looking at the documentation very closely and trying to improve that is a good first issue almost universally across the board. So I mean, I would just start there.
Have you considered opening an issue that says improve documentation for good first issue for people to find? Did you hear that question? Ah, okay. Hamel has lost audio. Okay. Well, we did last quite a while without major technical issues. There goes my face looking funky. I'm going to do stop screen share for a minute. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay. Hey, everybody. We'd like to thank Hamel for the presentation. And if you have any questions, please ask in the chat and we can get them answered later. And as well, we can also put the questions on the video and ask Hamel to answer those questions once the video is posted. So with that, we are going to end this webinar and we thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you.
Oh, bye.
Bye.